Good evening, and welcome to the League of Women Voters Candidates Forum for the 2021 November general election. My name is Carol O'Connell, and I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Hudson. I just want to do a quick sound check to make sure I'm being heard.
You are.
Thank you. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. So due to safety issues, we are presenting our forum virtually for the first time. And I would especially like to thank Charla Martin, who's doing all our technical assistance and background. She has been just amazing. I also want to thank the candidates who actually had to participate in learning sessions to make this forum run smoothly. And finally, and especially, I would like to thank our voter services team led by Bev Dorson for making this event possible. I just have two instructions. Normally when we do these forums, we let people know where the restrooms are. Hopefully you all know those. So I will not be going over that. But today, I do want to say that this forum is being recorded. The link to the recording will be available on our website and our Facebook page and will be aired on HCTV. The League of Women Voters Hudson retains the right to this forum, and no one may use the recording in any fashion without the permission of the League of Women Voters of Hudson. The second instruction is regarding the use of outside information when answering questions presented in this forum. Due to the nature of the virtual setting, information from others can be easily obtained through texting, emails, the internet, and other settings. We trust that candidates will refrain from obtaining any information through this manner when formulating answers to the questions presented in this forum. Now I would like to introduce our moderator, Dr. Roseanne Winter. Dr. Roseanne Winter is a career-long educator serving as a teacher of preschool, elementary, middle, and high school students in Ohio, California, and Virginia. She was a high school and district level administrator in California, Virginia, and Florida. She has also served as a graduate school professor at Virginia Tech, the University of Virginia, and George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. Dr. Winter is the current president of the League of Women Voters of the Akron area. She and her husband, Dr. William Winter, now live in Talmadge, Ohio, within 7 miles of their 2 daughters, 2 sons-in-laws, and 5 grandchildren. We're so grateful for Dr. Winter for agreeing to moderate this forum. Thank you so much. On to you, Dr. Winter.
And who puts my picture back on?
Just open your camera.
It's not showing. All right, now it's back. There you go. Thank you. And thank you all for being engaged in this process. It is extremely important to our democracy, and we appreciate your involvement in the governmental process. A lot of work, but certainly needs to be done. The format for this program will begin with the judges, and we will be giving them 2 minutes for opening statements, and we will be doing this in alphabetical order. So we'll begin with Lisa Coates. Lisa?
Lisa, are you able to unmute and start your video?
Can you hear me and see me?
Yes, we can, Lisa. Thank you.
Wonderful. Apologize for the delay. Don't know what was going on. All right, let me know when you want me to get started.
Are we okay for her to start?
Absolutely.
All right, Lisa.
All right, good evening. Thank you, Hudson League of Women Voters, for hosting this event this evening. I am Judge Lisa Coates, and I am running for re-election for judge at the Stowe Municipal Court. I have over 18 years of experience as judge on the court. During my tenure as judge, I've developed the court's first diversion program for first offenders. This was the model used to implement other diversion programs at the court. I also established the court's only specialized docket, a mental health court. The specialized docket is certified by the Ohio Supreme Court, and it is a 24-month program which integrates mental health treatment with judicial supervision with the purpose of reducing recidivism. And I've presided over that court for the last 11 years. During my next term in office, I would like to establish a drug court as well, as it is equally necessary, especially with the continuing opioid epidemic. In addition to my time on the bench, I believe it is essential for a judge to be active in the community. And I believe I've been very active in the community. I am a Rotarian. I'm a member of several chambers of commerce. I'm a member of the advisory committee for the SMF Rocks program at Stowe Monroe Falls City Schools, and that's an advocacy group for girls. I was a member of the advisory committee for Drug Safe Hudson prior to the pandemic. I'm on the Friends of Scouting Steering Committee for the Boy Scouts. I'm a judicial mentor for new judges. I regularly speak at the local schools and at Buckeye Girls State every year. And I speak every year for the last several years to Hudson High School seniors before they graduate on the Now That You're 18 program. I have lived in Hudson for almost 25 years. I am married and been married for 30 years, and I have 3 children, all of which have graduated from Hudson City Schools and are all presently in college. I received an excellent rating from the Akron Bar Association, and I would love to continue doing what I absolutely love to do and have a passion for. I respectfully ask for your vote on November 2nd. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, my name is Oliver Koo. I'm a candidate for judge for Stowe Municipal Court. I grew up in Monroe Falls, and I'm a lifelong resident of the area. I graduated from Stowe Monroe Falls High School in 1994. I currently live in Peninsula with my lovely wife and my child, my young daughter. It's 1.5 years old. I'm really proud of my work as an attorney and as a volunteer. I was recognized in 2019 as Portage County's Legal Volunteer of the Year for legal aid. For my work, in particular, helping those people that can't afford legal services, and for teaching Consumer Debt Clinic for helping people deal with consumer debt. I'm also proud of my service with several guardianships where I take care of the ill. My background is a little different than the other candidates. I have a background in engineering. I was trained as an engineer, and originally my first job out of college is I worked in the construction of the Ohio Turnpike widening project from Toledo to Youngstown. I'm also currently licensed in insurance and property casualty and life and health. I've been licensed in law since 2009, and I've represented multiple clients in all aspects of law, municipal and common pleas. I've represented people in criminal matters, in divorce, custody, estate, landlord, tenant, even parole. I believe the Stowe Municipal Court can be improved by adding additional services for those people suffering from substance abuse, for their families, for those who have served our community in the armed services, and additional services for those families that are in crisis. Because of my background and in technical skill and my hopes to improve the court in those three main dimensions, I hope you'll consider me as your candidate for judge of the State Municipal Court, and I hope to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Koo. And that's for Stowe Judicial Candidate Oliver Koo. And next, we have Samantha Lisi. Samantha, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. My name is Samantha Lisi, and I'm a candidate for judge for Stowe Municipal Court. I'm going to introduce myself briefly and give you some of my background. Currently, I serve as an administrative hearing officer with the Summit County Child Support Enforcement Agency, which is a division of the Summit County Prosecutor's Office. Prior to serving as an administrative hearing officer, I worked as a prosecutor with this division and have been with the office for 7 years. Before I became an employee with the prosecutor's office, I worked as a public defender in the Stark County Public Defender's Office for 3 years, where mainly I represented individuals who were indigent and facing criminal charges at the municipal court level in all municipal courts throughout Stark County, including Alliance, Massillon, and Canton. For my entire legal career, I've been a dedicated public servant, and I'm asking for the opportunity to continue to serve our community as your judge at Stowe Municipal Court. If I were elected, my priorities would be to keep our community safe with 2 main initiatives. First, I believe our court needs a drug court. As Judge Coates had already said, a drug court would be necessary in order to help those individuals who are having addiction issues that are causing their criminal behavior in an effort to reduce recidivism and help those individuals with their addiction. Additionally, I believe the court needs an intensive treatment program for those individuals who are convicted of domestic violence to help break the cycle of domestic violence. I believe I have the temperament as well as the legal background necessary to serve as your judge, and I'm asking for your vote on November 2nd or sooner if you're early voting. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha Lisi. Sorry about the mispronunciation in the beginning. And now you've heard from our candidates for judge, and now we're moving to our next group, which is candidates for clerk of courts. And we'll begin with Mike Razor, if we can get him on the screen here.
Okay, we need a couple minutes.
Okay. All right, I think we've got the new group of candidates. So again, I'll introduce the opening, which is for Stowe Municipal Clerk of Courts. And this again is a 2-minute opening statement. And Mike Razor, you are first, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Dr. Winter and the League of Women Voters for this opportunity to address everyone. I'm going to start by telling you what's important to me. Upstairs are my 2 little girls and my wife. They're getting a bath, or my 2 girls are at least. Family and my Christian faith are the #1 thing in my life. And it's what drives me to do what I'm doing here today. I'll tell you about my background first. I was educated at Stowe Monroe Falls High School. I was top in my class. Went to the University of Akron for undergrad, Akron for law school. I was 7th in my class at Akron. I served as the editor-in-chief of the Law Review. But I always knew that public service was going to be a part of my life. So while I was still in law school, I ran for city council in Stowe. There were big problems in Stowe, and I feel like we corrected them over the 10 years I served. We balanced the budget without raising taxes. We bolstered our police and fire departments. We invested in the roads and infrastructure. We passed term limits. We cut our city debt from $30 million down to $14 million at a time where every government was going the opposite direction. So I'm running because for a few reasons. First, nobody in the courthouse gets along. At least that's the perception, that there's a toxic work environment. And I'm a unifier. As a business lawyer, it's my day job. I get people together who ordinarily probably wouldn't want to do that. I know the art of compromise, and I'm going to bring peace and unity to that courthouse. I'm going to do my very best. I pledge that to you tonight to change that culture. I'm also going to protect the identity of victims. There's no reason why we should be posting the names of victims on the public docket on the internet. That needs to stop now. I think the voters of Ohio have stood up strongly in terms of deciding that we want to protect victims' rights. Third, I want to go paperless. I'm a tech guy. I'm not technically a tech guy, but I know technology very well. And I'm going to be somebody who advances this office into the 21st century. We're going to do away with microfiche. We're going to be paperless. Yes, we don't need to be killing trees in that office. Lastly, I'm just going to tell you, I don't think we elect many leaders anymore, but that's what I am. I'm going to lead this office successfully.
Thank you very much, Mr. Razor. Thank you for joining us tonight and for your time. Our second candidate running for Stowe Municipal Clerk of Courts is Amber Zibikowski. And Amber, when you are ready, they're going to unmute you. There you go. There you go.
All right. Good evening. I am Amber Zibikowski, and I am your Clerk of Courts. I'm honored to be here tonight in Hudson because this is actually my hometown. I grew up here and graduated from Hudson High School in 2003. 9 years ago today, in fact, I married the love of my life, my husband, Jared, at Gloria Day Lutheran Church over on Ravenna Street here in Hudson. Currently, my husband and I live in Stowe with our 2 young children, Grayson and Sienna. Prior to being elected your clerk in 2019, I served as the elected law director and chief prosecutor for the city of Stowe. In that role, I oversaw the prosecution of thousands of cases, provided vital legal counsel to the city, and represented both judges in legal matters, including one that went all the way to the Ohio Supreme Court. As the current clerk, I have processed tens of thousands of cases, manage a staff of up to 17 full-time deputy clerks, account for over $7.2 million in annual revenue, and reduced our office's expenditures by over 7%. In fact, our office operates so efficiently, the court continues to be one of only 4 in Ohio to completely self-fund its operations without taxpayer dollars. I've also worked with both judges to implement the latest technology by leveraging grant money from the Ohio Supreme Court for projects like text message reminders and e-ticketing. I'm proud of what I've been able to accomplish in just 2 years, but the clerk's office needs consistent professional leadership to succeed long-term. In the past 10 years, the court has had 4 different clerks. While both of my opponents are very fine people, both have a history of running for different offices year after year. As your current clerk and a former prosecutor, I've devoted my entire legal career to serving the Stowe Municipal Court. I respectfully ask for your vote this November so that I may continue to serve as your clerk for another full 6-year term. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Zibikowski, for your time and your service. We'll move to our next candidate, John Chapman. Mr. Chapman, when you are ready to unmute yourself, you may begin.
Thank you, and thank you everyone who's taking the time to tune in and listen to us tonight. I am John Chapman. I am running for the Stowe Municipal Clerk of Courts, and last night we spoke in Stowe at another candidate event, and they asked a very good question. What are the qualities that you should look for in Stowe? And I think another question that needs to be asked and answered is, why should Hudson care who the Stowe Clerk of Courts is? The simple answer is that Stowe Court is Hudson's court. It's your court. And you need to have a clerk's office that's going to manage those records and handle that business, not just efficiently, but professionally, and do it in a way that doesn't cost you so much money. I think that the most important quality that you need to look for in a clerk is someone with experience and with local knowledge. I'm someone who I graduated from the University of Akron. I've been an attorney for 20 years. I've been a local attorney for 20 years. I was a prosecutor for 11 years in the city of Cuyahoga Falls and also an assistant law director there. I prosecuted for Monroe Falls, for Silver Lake. At various times, I've appeared for every community in this court. I also was the deputy law director out in Streetsboro for a time, and I currently have a private practice in Akron. But it's not just the time that adds to experience. It's the breadth of it. I have practiced at every level. I practiced at the state level. I practiced at the local level. I've been to the federal level. I've been to courts all over the state of Ohio, and I've seen how it's done in other places. And I've seen that there are things that we can learn from those other courts. There are things that we can do better that other courts do better than us. But the most important thing is you need somebody that's going to be able to work with the local communities to get the most out of the money that Hudson and the other communities pay to the courts, and try and cut those costs down. So that's what I'm trying to do as the clerk. I'm hoping to do that, and I hope that I have your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. And again, thank you for coming tonight and sharing your candidacy with us. Now we're going to move into our Hudson City Council at large, and there are 8 candidates. So this will take a little while to get everybody in the room. So bear with us while we clear out the room and bring in the new people.
They are all accounted for.
All right, here we go. And this is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to start with a 1-minute opening statement from each candidate. Then we have 5 questions. During your opening statement, you will go in alphabetical order, but that's the end of the order. After that, when you get a question, I will call your name in the order in which they were randomly came up when I did the schedule. And then I will read the question to you after I call your name. And each time I will read the question again so that you will have an opportunity to hear it before you begin to speak. So when I call your name, if you'll turn on your mic, and then I will read the question, and then you may begin. Remember, for the questions, for your opening statement, you have 2 minutes, but for the questions and your closing statement, you have 1. If you have any questions about rebuttal, that rebuttal should come up in your closing statement, not during your question time. Any questions? All right, so we're going to begin with Chris Banwig. He is first alphabetically, so he will begin with his opening statement. Chris?
Well, thank you, and good evening to the League of Women Voters, members and guests. Thank you for this opportunity to share about myself with you and the broader community. I'm a husband to the lovely Leslie and a father to 3 children who all attend Hudson schools. I have a bachelor's in chemistry, an MBA, and a master's in strategic studies with a focus in cyberspace operations. I've been a resident of Hudson for the last 10 years, which is not as long as many of the people that live here, but it has been enough time for me to develop a deep appreciation for the community. In the business world, I've worked in Fortune 150 companies in numerous roles since I left active duty in 2005, most recently in project management and global transformations, where I coordinate large budgets with a diverse group of people and interests to deliver results for the organization. I've also been a Marine officer for over 20 years, starting as a finance officer and then transitioning into the reserve as a civil affairs officer, where I've deployed multiple times to regions divided by socioeconomic disparity, race, and religion. I have built or supported governments focused on civil governance, infrastructure, and economics. My goal has been to reinforce their stability and emphasize the government's connection to the people they serve. As I've walked Hudson and met hundreds of residents, I've been asked many times why I decided to run for council. Now, while I'm not a professional politician, the number and variety of residents that asked me to do this made me step forward. And while I prefer to serve in less public ways, in our current climate, I feel that I will contribute civility, a level-headed approach, and mature leadership to unifying the community and enabling progress on basic infrastructure, phase 2, and other similar initiatives. The bottom line is that I love the community and our people. I've benefited from the community and want to pay that forward. I bring more skills and experience than political opinions, and I offer a civil approach and professional experience to the residents of this city.
Thank you very much, Mr. Benwick.
Thank you.
Next person on the list is Mike Donovan. Mr. Donovan, you may begin whenever you're ready. You are muted, Mr. Donovan.
I'm sorry.
Here we go. Sorry, let's try again.
Okay. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity. I'm Mike Donovan, and I'm running for Hudson City Council at large. And I am asking for the vote of Hudson residents because I have the knowledge, skills, and experience to do the job. I have a master's in public administration and a bachelor's as well. I have 30 years experience in both the public and private sectors, including 6 years on Capitol Hill for 4 different members of Congress. For the past 17 years, I've been a resident of Hudson, and I've been working for Progressive Corporation in government and industry affairs. I have a passion for public service, which I first demonstrated when I was elected to local office back in my hometown of Danvers, Massachusetts, at the age of 21. Now, with my children having gone through our 3 children having gone through the Hudson City schools, I'd like to give back to the community that has given so much. I'm a 17-year Hudson resident. I've been a coach, a volunteer for kids sports. I was on the Hudson Soccer Association Board of Directors for a few years. And I'm in favor of strong government. I am in favor of the current council, strong council, city manager form of government. And I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donovan. And next is Patricia Getz. Patricia, make sure you're unmuted before. There we go. You're ready to go.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for hosting this event. Leadership has many components, but one important one is to be able to handle challenges. I'm Dr. Patricia Getz, and I have the leadership qualities to handle the challenges that Hudson has. I've handled many personal challenges, from paying my way through college and medical school to dealing with illness and death within my family. This made me resilient, tough, and empathic, leadership qualities we really need here in Hudson. I've had many challenges professionally also. I helped crack the glass ceiling in medicine when I was one of 9 women in my class of 130 at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. The leadership skills I've learned as a physician and as a child and adolescent psychiatrist are critical thinking, collaboration, teamwork, the importance of data, strategic planning, problem solving, looking for strength in a system and in individuals, and most importantly, being able to listen to people. Working on the county and state level helped me understand how government works. As a city council member, I would listen to the citizens, talk to experts, examine the data, and then come up with a decision. Those decisions would be based on what is best for the community, not on my own personal interests. I've lived in Hudson for 16 years. My daughter and 3 grandkids and son-in-law also live here. 2 of the kids are in Hudson schools. I have the leadership qualities Hudson needs, and I respectfully ask you to vote for Dr. Patricia Getz for City Council on November 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Getz. And next is Karen Heater. And she is live mic.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Karen Heater, and I'm running for City Council at Large. Thank you for inviting me to speak with you this evening. I am a 40-year resident of Hudson and attended Hudson schools from kindergarten through 12th grade. I'm a licensed professional engineer, and I have a degree in mechanical engineering from Grove City College. I started my career with BP Oil in downtown Cleveland and have worked in various engineering capacities over my 30-year career. I currently manage multi-million-dollar energy efficiency programs for large investor-owned utilities. I'm married to Dave, and I have 3 children, the youngest of which is a senior in high school. Over the last several months during my campaign, I have been asked many times, why are you running for office? And the answer is my passion, Hudson legacy, and professional skills make me an excellent addition to our city council. I had a wonderful childhood in Hudson, and I realized we can't keep Hudson in a time bottle and that we need to evolve. But I want to make sure we grow organically in a way that maintains our heritage and our small town character. As a licensed professional engineer, I have extensive experience with many of the facets of city operations: fiscal and budget management, design and operation of water, sewer, and electric utilities, management and allocation of staffing, and communication skills. When approached with a task or presented with an opportunity, I know how to explore pros and cons and what questions to ask to fully understand the potential outcomes. We are fortunate in Hudson to have a very capable city staff who perform their jobs well. We as city council representatives need to understand city functions and operations, as we are responsible for important decisions such as approving the annual budget, regulating land use through zoning codes, and establishing long and short-term objectives and priorities that impact the future of our city. This position takes an investment of time, and I'm in a position both professionally and personally to give the time that residents deserve. I hope I have the opportunity to serve as your next city council representative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Heater. Our next candidate is Greg Janik. Greg, whenever you're ready, unmute yourself and you may begin. There you go. You're live.
So sorry. Hi, I'm Greg Janik. I've lived in Hudson since 1974 with my family on 30 acres just south of the village. I'm a drummer. I do some radio locally. I'm an animal advocate. I'm a gardener. But most importantly, I'm a citizen here in this town that we all share. I'd like to thank the League tonight for their insight and their wisdom to put this together for all of us, the candidates, to be in front of you tonight as citizens. As a citizen, I had the good fortune to be as appointed by council over the years to serve on our original television and advisory committee, as well as our recycling committee, our ad hoc DARE committee, as in addition, chair and member of the planning commission. I sat with our fellow citizens on all of these boards. And I think the most important thing that I bring to this position of city council is that citizenry connection. I think it's vitally important in this time at 2021 that our citizens' voices be heard. Council most recently last night made a decision for our community that didn't take our citizens into account, phase 2. And I currently ask all of our citizens to be involved. It's my intention to do just that, to bring you to the table, to be part of what is your tax dollar that we spend as council, if elected, whomever amongst these candidates tonight. But what I find most important is once and for all, our voices be heard, whether it's downtown, our YDC property, our broadband use. The things that we do as a community on a daily basis involve your tax dollar. And it is time for us to take accountability for that. It's what I want to do. I want to have you at the table with me. It's important. Maybe that means changes to our charter, but if we can finally be the example that we talk about being, it is time for us. I think we can. We've got a great opportunity. So if it means putting the brakes on phase 2 right now, let's come to the table together and make the right decisions. Let's do it together. I look forward to doing that with you. Thanks for your time.
No, I wasn't on. Thank you very much, Mr. Janik. We appreciate your attendance here today. And next is Nicole Kowalski.
Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters of Hudson for hosting this forum. I'm Nicole Kowalski, current at-large City Councilwoman. Last year, I was elected to serve our community as an at-large member of the Hudson City Council. I am thankful and honored. Since being sworn in, I have worked with my colleagues on council to address several important issues. Together, we have approved a sidewalks and trails plan that is bringing more connectivity to Hudson, found creative solutions to support our businesses during COVID, address pedestrian safety concerns, and approved plans to make significant improvements to our roads and infrastructure. But more importantly, I've wasted no time getting to work for you on the priorities you requested, and I've also not been afraid to introduce some initiatives of my own. Currently, we are in the midst of reviewing updates to our land development code, looking towards the implementation of a pedestrian safety study, implementing adaptive signal technology to improve traffic in our town, adopting a 2022 budget, and more. In the coming months, Council will be continuing our work on several important issues which will require experienced leadership to complete. Looking towards our future, my vision for our community is simple. Whether it is 1 year from now or 20, balancing the inevitable growth of our city with the immediate needs of the community is and should remain the #1 priority. As a council member, I have maintained a nonpartisan mindset and worked hard for the good of our city. I am the only incumbent seeking re-election, and the time I have spent on council this past year, along with my experience as a small business owner in Hudson, a professor, a community volunteer, a wife, a mother, has given me the experience needed to continue to lead and move our city forward. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much. And next, Sarah Norman.
And to remember to unmute. It's too easy to read campaign literature without translating it into what it means for a city. So I wanted to spend my time this evening relating my personal background to my present day character and qualifications. I majored in art and history, and then I went to law school, and I have traveled a lot from third world countries to opera houses. I see bigger than just the localized interests of a small town in the corner of Ohio. I see how we are impacted by outside forces and how we impact others by our municipal choices. In the past, historic preservation was a lot about Washington slept here, but today it's about workmanship, safety, asset conservation, and preventing unnecessary landfill out of serviceable architecture. It is, if you will, recycling on the biggest scale possible. I worked as a mediator and a deputy county prosecutor. I have the ability to listen to conflicting sides, find common ground, and establish a framework for solutions. I have already had the most difficult conversation of my life, and it was not about politics. I am a crisis-ready leader. I was a woman entrepreneur with my specialty law practice. I'm a researcher, writer, and I analyze things. I have the ability to visualize multiple options for an issue that make me a convincible person. Effort to make the case and withstand my questioning is well spent, because then I become a capable defender of a new conclusion. I have a great family. My husband and I have been married for 29 years. My kids know how to advocate for themselves and others. We are generous with time and with love, and I serve Hudson from this stable home base. I'm proud to make Ohio's Sunshine Law real every day. I expect government to be that transparent, because the other thing that makes government transparent is knowing the character of the people who serve. We need wise, thoughtful, mature, and confident leadership. We have no time for social media drama, weaponizing civic rights, backroom deals, or putting personal agendas ahead of service. I'm Sarah Norman, and I bring all of this wisdom and experience to representing you.
Thank you, Ms. Norman. And our final opening statement will be delivered by Todd Zedek.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me to share a bit about myself and my vision for the future of our community. I'm a lifetime resident of Hudson who cares deeply about our town. I have no political ambitions, aspirations, or goals except to preserve that which needs to be preserved and to grow and change that which needs to grow and change in our town. I am a reasonable, rational, civil, and thoughtful person. I am creative and I am a doer. I come into the office with a real plan for making things happen on phase 2, on the YDC, and on Velocity Broadband. I am a lifetime and active member of the First Congregational Church. I have coached Little League baseball and soccer. I was a member of Hudson Kiwanis. I helped to create, found, and actively run a COVID-related charity based around the idea of neighbor helping neighbor. I have hosted public sessions on political civility. A key factor in the success of these sessions was the establishment of our points of commonality. We need to agree on that which we agree. The council proposal last night, which involves permitting the city manager to enter in negotiations with Fairmont, is frankly almost jaw-dropping in its insensitivity to feelings of the community. A frequent complaint is that council does not listen, and there can be no greater evidence of this than the actions taken yesterday. I am a listener. I am a builder of coalitions. I am a person who tries to see the middle and will dedicate myself to the rebuilding of the reasonable middle. Thank you for your time.
And thank you, Mr. Zidak. We are now going to move into the question and answer period of this forum for your candidacy. There will be 5 questions, and once again, they are 1-minute answers, and they are randomly chosen who's first, second, third. So no one will be first continuously or last continuously. So our first question will go to Karen Heater. She will be our first candidate to speak. And the question is this, and I'll repeat it for each of you as you come up. Do you believe that our nonpartisan elections require you to abstain from accepting support from a political party? Why or why not? Ms. Heater, you're there you go. Thank you.
So I personally, I have not accepted any money from partisan support. This position is a nonpartisan position, and I have moved forward in that capacity. Monetarily, I think it is important that we maintain nonpartisanship. I think our responsibility is to move forward as city council members representing all citizens, regardless of where they fall politically. So I think it's important that we maintain that, and that's been my intention, and that's what I've done throughout this campaign.
Thank you very much. And our second person to answer the question is Sarah Norman, and I will read it once again. Do you believe that our nonpartisan elections require you to abstain from accepting support from a political party? Why or why not?
I did get this question at the Rotary event that I just attended last week. And the gist of my answer at that time was that we have to be very honest with ourselves about a difference between the function of the office, which is absolutely nonpartisan, always has been and always will be, and the realities of running a political race, which are that when we go to the doors, people ask us many times which party we belong to, and they don't care that we say nonpartisan because that doesn't help them answer the question. So more than importantly than that, what we have to look beyond is the fact that we throw this term around very casually as though it is some sort of moral obligation, and yet we don't address the bias that actually exists behind it. We have seen the bias on our council, as nonpartisan as it is, stand in the way of the citizens making decisions for themselves about charter changes. I stand against bias, and I will always stand against bias as I am a nonpartisan candidate.
Thank you, Ms. Norman. Our next person to answer this same question is Chris Van Wyck. And again, the question is, do you believe that our nonpartisan elections require you to abstain from accepting support from a political party? Why or why not?
So I'll begin by saying I don't think we can control some of the support if someone endorses you or makes a comment. But from a financial side, I think certainly I could avoid receiving a financial payment. Now, I do think that it's important that we address the issue of partisanship or non-partisanship. Partisanship is simply a label, so it's really hard to define what support is from that. And I'll go to a bit of what Sarah said in that bias or partiality, I think, is much more important to look at. And I think that it's more important that we address that when we sit in the chair. The support, as I said, is hard to control. If someone's going to write an endorsement, they've written an endorsement, I can't really support that or prevent that. I can refrain from taking money, but when I am a candidate or when I am in position, my behavior, whether I'm partial to a political agenda or I'm representing the residents of Hudson, I think that's really more important. And my focus is to represent the interests of the residents of Hudson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Banwood. And our next answer will come from Todd Zidak. Todd, the question again is, do you believe that our nonpartisan elections require you to abstain from accepting support from a political party? Why or why not?
I think the spirit of the law, if it is in fact a law, is exactly that you should refrain from soliciting or accepting support from a party. That does not mean an individual could not be a member of a party and support a candidate who was a member of that party. I think that the candidates may choose to band together because they are of like mind, of like spirit. I think in many respects, the spirit of the nonpartisan election was that people would run separately as their own entity and not sort of collude and team up, but people will do whatever they do, and there's no law against it. But I absolutely believe that if a political party offered their support, it should be rejected out of hand.
Thank you very much. Next is Greg Janik. And the question again is, do you believe that our nonpartisan elections require you to abstain from accepting support from a political party? Why or why not?
Absolutely, we should abstain. Whether we're a Democrat, whether we are a Republican, the position of counsel for the city of Hudson is a non-political position. Personally, I'm running an in-kind campaign. I made 10 signs. I think there's 8 up. 2 I gave out, 2 aren't showing, but that's okay. The point being that I share my views with Mr. Zidak on this one as well. This is Hudson. One only has to drive through downtown to realize that the partisanship is well on display in our downtown. But that's the choices that others make. For myself personally, that's all the money I'm spending. I spent $220 on 10 signs. It was a pretty good investment for my campaign, which I will report as required. But my affiliation to political party has nothing to do with my position with city council. This is a nonpartisan position. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, Patricia Getz. The question again is, do you believe that our nonpartisan elections require you to abstain from accepting support from a political party? Why or why not?
Yeah, I do believe that. I personally am not accepting any kind of endorsements or money. I'm not going to be on any sample ballot from any party. I'm very confused, though, because some of the previous candidates said that they weren't accepting any kind of party affiliation, and yet they have their signs in front of the Republican Victory Center. So that just makes me confused, because that doesn't sound like that is being bipartisan. Being nonpartisan. It's important that for years we've not looked at who was Republican or Democrat. We had many excellent people from both parties, and we had an excellent city council. So it's very confusing what's really happened in this election.
All right, thank you very much. And next is Mike Donovan. Again, the question is, do you believe that our nonpartisan elections require you to abstain from accepting support from a political party? Why or why not? You again are muted, Mr. Donovan. There you go.
I'm very sorry. Yes, I think that the currently we should abstain from accepting contributions or endorsements from political parties. I recently asked the Summit County Democratic Party to take down a post that they had in favor of an event that had my name in it. I think this is a nonpartisan position, and I'm not accepting endorsements or donations from partisan sources.
All right, thank you. Mr. Donovan, you might want to turn your mic up a little bit if you can.
Okay, how do I do that?
You should see a little up on the top right-hand side of your thing, maybe a little square when you hover up there, and you should be able to find the button that says volume, or you may have to do it on your computer. But you'll have some time to do that.
Okay, I'll look for
Okay,
that.
we'll go on to the next person, and that would, of course, be Nicole Kowalski. Again, the question, do you believe that our nonpartisan elections require you to abstain from accepting support from a political party? Why or why not?
Thank you. As your current at-large city council member, I have maintained a nonpartisan mindset. And as I stated before, I've worked hard for the good of our city all throughout this year. I do believe that it's important not to take any party endorsements or accept any money from any political parties, and I have not done so. In addition to that, I do think that this partisan politics that we see trickling down from the national level, it does really damage the community. Roads are not red or blue. You know, taxes, they're not red or blue. Playground equipment, they're not red or blue. So I think that what we really need to be focusing on is just making decisions in the best interest of the community at all times.
Okay, thank you very much. You'll all be happy to know I won't be reading that question again. So we'll move on to the second question, and we are going to begin with Mr. Donovan again. Mr. Donovan, the second question is, regardless of election results, the incoming council will collectively have the least experience in recent history. Do you believe that term limits for council members are currently necessary or appropriate? Why or why not?
I disagree with term limits, particularly for this office. You're correct about there being a lack of experience. I think term limits they're called limits. They limit what the voters have, the selection that voters have. But I disagree with there being term limits for this office.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, Nicole Kowalski. Again, regardless of election results, the incoming council will collectively have the least experience in recent history. Do you believe that term limits for council members are currently necessary or appropriate? Why or why not?
Thank you for the question. Regarding experience, I think that is an important point because I do have now almost a year under my belt of serving Hudson as an at-large city council member. So if what you're looking for is experience, you should vote to re-elect me. Regarding term limits, I did have the opportunity to vote on term limit legislation that was brought forward, and I voted no on it. I believe that term limit legislation like this takes the choice away from the people. And I believe that something that has over the course of history been sort of arbitrarily decided. Why 4 years? I believe that term limits in many ways do more harm than good in a nonpartisan government such as ours, where it can be sometimes difficult to find people to run for elections. Clearly not this time around, since we do have 8 people running, which is wonderful, but I don't want to limit the voters' choice when they go to the ballot box.
Thank you very much. Next is Karen Heater. Ms. Heater, the question again is, regardless of election results, the incoming council will collectively have the least experience in recent history. Do you believe that term limits for council members are currently necessary or appropriate? Why or why not?
Thank you for the question. I do believe that term limits are appropriate. Look at what we have right now. We have 8, very qualified residents going for 3 seats. There's no shortage of residents who certainly are capable and have the skills. What we find too is that when we engage more residents in this process, that adds to the diversity of ideas and creative thought. And it prevents, I think, what's happened where we tend to have some folks that stay on for a long period of time. And it's great that they've given us that service, but residents can get complacent. So in a community of 22,000 people, I certainly think we can find, very qualified folks to step up. We also stagger the terms, so that helps prevent that situation where you have too many people, new people coming in at one time. So I do support term limits.
Thank you very much. Next is Sarah Norman. Again, regardless of election results, the incoming council will collectively have the least experience in recent history. Do you believe that term limits for council members, are currently necessary or appropriate? Why or why not?
Well, first, I have a few qualms about being asked this question because we all know that the League of Women Voters is very opposed to term limits. They have said so in the public record many times. You have really 2 questions here, and one is about the nature of the experience that people are going to bring onto council. And I have lived in such a rich life with so many experiences that all but one of the candidates, we pretty much have doubled the life experiences of one. But the other part of that, and that experience translates into wise decision making. The other part of the question is about the term limits themselves. And the important question is not what I think about term limits. What the important question is will I stand in the way of the people to make that decision, as council recently did? The incumbent voted against sending a charter decision to the people to make that decision for themselves. That must be a lack of trust in the people making that decision for the way that they want to be governed. And that's a very anti-American way to be. I don't stand for those kinds of principles. I support the Constitution.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, Chris Banwig. And again, the question, regardless of election results, the incoming council will collectively have the least experience in recent history. Do you believe that term limits for council members are currently necessary or appropriate? Why or why not?
Well, I think first to the comment on experience, it would be experience limited to the Hudson City Council. So I believe you will get the experience you elect, and that might not be from the council, but there's a lot of experience on this call right now. Second, I support the idea of the people making that decision. And I know that sounds very similar to a recent answer, but I personally feel that term limits can be useful. And I'll say that because in the multitudes of governments that I've worked in around the world, I find that if people are in government too long, they become detached from the people that they represent, and they become more interested in retaining power or retaining their position of influence than actually serving those who they're charged to serve. And that's not just here in the United States, but that's in governments all around the world. So again, I'll go to the experience and having worked in governments all around the world, from the city to the national level for over 20 years. I think we have the opportunity to have some experience elected to council.
Thank you. Next, Todd Zidak. Regardless of election results, the incoming council will collectively have the least experience in recent history. Do you believe that term limits for council members are currently necessary or appropriate? Why or why not?
I think that it is absolutely appropriate for the people of the community to choose whether or not they collectively think it's important or not. Certainly, there's something to be said for a person being in a position and learning the ins and outs. There's also much to be said for new blood, new ideas, new approaches, and that sort of thing. So I am relatively agnostic as to whether I personally believe it's important or not, but I absolutely think it's the duty of the council to make that choice available to the citizenry.
Thank you. Greg Zanuck. Regardless of election results, the incoming council will collectively have the least experience in recent history. Do you believe that term limits for council members are currently necessary or appropriate? Why or why not?
Absolutely. As a citizen, first and foremost, as a citizen who is appointed to serve various boards, it is the citizenry that has represented this community on these boards historically in our town. We are all citizens. So as that being the premise of what we are about, it is vitally important that the variety of our community get represented each turnaround when its seats are open. As Mrs. Heater said, that's why we set up a staggered opportunity for seats to be filled so that we don't run into a program. At some point, every council that came on board was inexperienced. We can look at some of those that still have portraits in City Hall who were inexperienced when they came here. So my point is, if we're not fearful of our office, let's give everybody the opportunity to serve it. Absolutely. Let's put some term limits in place. I'd like to see council start that process again once this next term comes around. I look for some of us to do that. I think it's important.
Thank you very much. And to close this question, our last speaker is Patricia Getz. Again, regardless of the election results, the incoming council will collectively have the least experience in recent history. Do you believe that term limits for council members are currently necessary or appropriate? Why or why not?
Well, I think what people are forgetting is that we actually have term limits. If we don't like a council person, we vote them out. So that is how their term is limited. So it's already part of our ecology. I've spent time talking to the assistant city managers and the city manager, and city government is very, very complicated. So no matter that we all have a lot of leadership and background, it's a very different world there. And so having some people who have institutional knowledge is really important so that we can really do a good job. If you've ever observed the city council meetings, say when Mr. Dessessor talks about something that happened a number of years ago and he remembers that, he's able to bring that in and everyone can look at that, remember that, and use it for the good of the town.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for question number 2. Question number 3 will begin with Todd Zidak. And the question is, how would you describe Hudson's current commitment to pursue sustainable energy sources and address climate change? What would you change and promote?
I think the current council has not done a lot in this regard. I think that their collective response has been relatively tepid. They may not have been given much direction. They may not have been offered very many choices that are tenable. It takes a lot of property to put together a solar farm. I don't know that there's enough wind in this area to make a wind-powered generating system viable. So I believe that we should pursue any and all opportunities to exploit renewable energy resources. I don't believe there's been a lot done with that. I don't know that that's anybody's fault, but it probably has not been aggressively solicited by the city council, and it probably should be.
All right. Thank you very much. Next is Patricia Getz. The question again is, how would you describe Hudson's current commitment to pursue sustainable energy sources and address climate change? What would you change and promote?
Well, one of the things that I would change is when we are building, we should look at, are we building green buildings? And there is a whole way you can do that through the Leadership and Energy Environmental Design certification. And that looks at, is there clean indoor air, ample natural light? Can you reduce energy consumption? Are you using green materials? And I'm not aware that that is done right now. So for example, with phase 2, that would be a great place for that to be done. I think that we do assess things through the Army Corps of Engineers, like for the wetlands and things like that. I think that we need to then also look at how to get more sustainable energy. So getting geothermal, wind, solar, all of that. And it doesn't have to be done in Hudson. It can be done from other places. But I think all of that is necessary for us to do.
All right, thank you very much. Nicole Kowalski, next. And the question, how would you describe Hudson's current commitment to pursue sustainable energy sources and address climate change? What would you change and promote?
Thank you for that question. Currently, I think Hudson could improve in their commitment to sustainable energy sources. I do think that over time, as we have the opportunity to add more renewable energy to Hudson Public Power's energy portfolio, that will be crucial. Currently, quite a large percentage is coal, and we're seeing a lot of issues with that regarding the plant that we have about 40% of our energy that we receive from from Illinois. So that is a problem that council does need to address. As far as addressing climate change, we do need to remember that climate change will impact us locally, even if we're maybe not seeing it as much as some other states are. So we do need to think globally and act locally when we are thinking about ways that we can address climate change.
Thank you very much. Greg Janik is next. Again, how would you describe Hudson's current commitment to pursue sustainable energy sources and address climate change? What would you change and promote?
Well, I will use the example of one of my fellow candidates tonight, Mrs. Kowalski, in regards to her current seat on council and what she just explained to us in regards to what council needs to do. As an environmentalist, we need to squarely be thinking outside of our box to hang our hats for the rest of our future on fossil fuels. The ability to purchase energy around this world is just expanding as we speak. Solar, wind, thermal energy, and so forth all exist. Hudson may not be the place for a giant solar farm, but solar is being used all around us in Summit and Medina counties. Whether it's in phase 2 or whatnot, Hudson residents can take advantage of that as well. Environmentally, our record across the board is not very good when we treat our planet the way we do here in Hudson, with the way we have developed. Our land use code, when originally put in, addressed that. A lot of changes, when we look at the new code, could address that. Renewable energy is squarely Hudson's future.
Thank you, Mr. Janik. And next is Mike Donovan. Again, how would you describe Hudson's current commitment to pursue sustainable energy sources and address climate change? What would you change and promote?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. I would describe currently, I don't know much of what Hudson is doing to improve sustainable sources of energy, but I would agree with Ms. Kowalski about increasing our renewable energy portfolio with Hudson Public Power. I'd also agree with previous, I think it was Patricia Getz who talked about building, and we could make it easier for green building, whether that be solar panels or, the types of materials that go into building. I think those are a couple of things. And I know phase 2 is something I think that when we're looking at that and getting public input, we may be hearing from environmentalists about some of the impermeable surfaces, the larger Heinens, the pavement, A lot of that will create runoff into the Brandywine, watershed. And so I think that's something we need to look at right away. So
All right.
Thank you,
Mr. Donovan. Next is Chris Banwick. How would you describe Hudson's current commitment to pursue sustainable energy sources and address climate change? What would you change and promote?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think the way I would describe it is evolving. As we've been forced to confront this with the potential impact to Hudson Public Power and the closing of the coal mine in Illinois, there are two elements I see in it. And one is where we buy our power. And from the discussions I've heard, we look to have a portfolio that complements both renewable and a base load of fossil fuels to ensure that people's lights come on and the heat's on in the winter, which is at this time with technology an unfortunate reality. Now, I think there's a second portion of it, and that's what we allow residents to do. I was glad to hear a suggestion I made in the Rotary Roundtable be taken up in council and discussed about removing the 10 kilowatt limitation for residential solar power generation. And I think that's the second element. It's what we enable and allow our residents to do, because not only does it affect the sustainability of the world, but it affects the resilience of the community in case of natural disaster or loss of power from somewhere else.
All right, thank you very much. Now, Karen Heater is next. And the question again, how would you describe Hudson's current commitment to pursue sustainable energy sources and address climate change? What would you change and promote?
Thank you. Good question. So I think we're doing okay. We've heard this before. Hudson Public Power does have in their portfolio a pretty substantial amount dedicated towards renewable energy. It's about 40%. The average in the U.S. is actually closer to 12 to 15%. So on that scale, we're doing okay. There is the bigger picture of Hudson Public Power and their commitment to the coal plant in Indiana. And, that's kind of that factor in there that we aren't really sure what to do. We might get stuck holding the bag, paying for this plant through 2057. That might, limit our ability to explore other potentially a little more expensive options. And Chris kind of said it well too. The third component of it is getting our residents involved. We need to engage with them and give them options and have transparency in our decisions. Everything we do really comes down to residents and residential engagement.
Thank you. And to close this question, we have Sarah Norman. Again, the question is, how would you describe Hudson's current commitment to pursue sustainable energy sources and address climate change? What would you change and promote?
Right. So I would agree with some of the other comments in the sense that I think Hudson has done a very good and balanced job of managing its portfolio, because we just went through a pandemic. And what the pandemic taught us, if anything, was that we depend in the United States and in Hudson, we depend upon reliable electricity. If you've been to a third world country, you understand what it means to have to schedule your power usage because of the grid being shut off in your area or what have you. We don't want to live that way. So the next part of it is when we look at making green energy a much larger bearer of that burden, do we put ourselves at risk of a catastrophe like happened in Texas this last year? So managing all of that requires real discernment. That's what a more mature leader like myself would bring to making these decisions for Hudson. I think the question that no one has asked is whether or not we're willing to be litigants if we get stuck with the debt burden of the Prairie State utility. So.
All right, thank you very much. And that ends that third question. We have two more. And to begin the question number 4, we have Greg Janik. And question number 4 is, and this one's shorter, so it'll be a little easier for me to keep repeating. What do you think of the Fairmont Properties proposal to develop the Phase 2 property?
In my conversations on the Hudson Greens and my good fortune to meet some of the citizens going door to door, and having sat on Phase 1 as planning chair and listening to citizens at that time, I'm once again not surprised that our citizens, elected officials, bowed to the desires of Fairmont Properties and our friends at Heinens. What strikes me is when Heinens came into town, they called out the uniqueness and size of our community, which was why they built the store to the size that they did. And I guess at some point we have to ask ourselves in Hudson, when is enough for downtown for us? 40,000 square foot, as Mr. Donovan said, the impervious surface and runoff alone on a yearly basis, and its impact, the stormwater management, and what would take up so much space, green space, senior citizen center, a recycling center, a historic downtown's extension with real streetscapes and homes, not more retail and impervious surface.
Thank you. Now, next is Chris Banwig. What do you think of the Fairmont Properties proposal to develop the Phase 2 property?
Well, I think first, I want to make sure that we're working for a mutually beneficial solution. And I think that comes from the fact that a developer doesn't develop without profit. And if we want or need what they're proposing, I think then we need to ensure that we as a community are getting what we need. It's a jewel of a piece of property down there. I think that Hudson residents will live with the structure and cost for a very long time. So we need to ensure at a minimum the acceptable density for the community, and as well a focus on empty nester housing, which is what I've heard frequently from residents across the city. In addition, if it is developed, I think we need to ensure that it complements the appeal of Hudson. And finally, that continuous engagement with the community will let us know if they're supportive of it. I think we need to give it the time to make sure that there's a broad base of support. And that's not just hangers on the far edge that love or hate it, but given the history of Phase 2, I think it's important that we take the right time to make the decision.
Thank you. Patricia Getz. What do you think of the Fairmont Properties proposal to develop the Phase 2 property?
Well, I think one of the things we need to remember is we do need resident feedback, and that's really important. And that's just started. There was one last Wednesday, and there's another one in a couple of weeks where people can come look at the plans and talk about it. Everywhere I have gone knocking on doors, people are talking about needing empty nester housing, and housing that is affordable. Not $600,000 type houses. And the density people seem to want, and I would think would be great for there, would be the density that would mirror the historic district. I live in the historic district. I don't even have a backyard, but I love it. And the architecture to be like the historic district, but all those things will be managed later. And I think Nicole might be able to say more about what the council did, which was not say that we're going to go ahead with this. And she can address that.
All right, thank you. Karen Heater, what do you think of the Fairmont Properties proposal to develop the Phase 2 property?
Good question. I like, I like what they've done so far. We have had initial community input. And overall, it sounds like it's, a better direction. We're moving in that right direction, but it feels very rushed. And I don't like that. I don't like having stipulations put on where we need a decision made by November. To me, we owe it to the residents, to make sure that we do end up with a development that has that forward vision that we're all looking for. As I said, I think it is moving in the right direction, but we need to take that time. We've waited almost 20 years to have that property developed. I think we can take a little bit longer and make sure that what we end up is exactly what we all envision for Hudson. And that's what I think.
Thank you. Nicole Kowalski, what do you think of the Fairmont Properties proposal to develop the Phase 2 property?
Thank you. First, I do want to take a second, like Dr. Getz alluded to clarify something. Yesterday at the council meeting, The purchase and sale agreement was only on the first reading, which means we will not vote on it for a little bit still, because we are still in that community input process. There is an open house scheduled for October 21st, where a lot of residents are planning on attending. And it's my belief that if council gets feedback that we need to pause or put on the brakes or whatever it may be, I believe council would listen. What I can say is I have not fully formed my opinion yet. This is a very preliminary plan. I think that it's very good and an improvement over what we've seen in the past, and that's really important. But that feedback that I'm getting from residents is overwhelmingly positive this time. And I really enjoy the fact that Fairmount really truly wants to be a community partner in this, and I look forward to seeing how it develops.
Thank you. Mike Donovan, what do you think of the Fairmount Properties proposal to develop the Phase 2 property? You're muted again, Mr. Donovan.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
Yes, the Fairmont property, I think that this is a good, it feels like they've taken into consideration some of the wants and needs that have been expressed. This has been, as Karen, I think, said earlier, it's been a 20-year process. They're providing empty nester housing. But I think that there needs to be enough time and consideration for public input. It appears that we're doing that. They've had the open house and there's going to be further open houses. So I just hope that, as you know, it feels very preliminary right now. I think as we move forward, there certainly needs to be opportunity for public input. And I'd be willing to sit back and watch and hear what the other parties have to say.
Thank you. Sarah Norman, what do you think of the Fairmont Properties proposal to develop the Phase 2 property?
So anytime a rush is put on a contract, it's usually a red flag, and people who have experience working with developers and contracts know that. So I already had a red flag when Fairmount came up with its third do or die proposal for the city, and I'm tired of our city being put to ultimatums like that. Now, they did create a much better design, so we're at least moving in the right direction. But I do feel that there was a commitment made to study the values of this community, and I have to credit ZDAC with really pressing that issue to council. Council made that commitment just 4 months ago, and yet has already, by giving it the first reading, and run around collecting those values of the community in order to line the developers' pockets, because this is a for-profit venture for them. Let's make no mistake about that. So do I think Fairmount can be the ultimate winner of this project? Yes. Do I think we need to do it by November? Absolutely not. And I would love to see us take a breath, take the time, as Mrs. Heater said, work out some more details before we commit.
Thank you. And to finish this question, Todd Zidak, what do you think of the Fairmont Properties proposal to develop the Phase 2 property?
I think that Fairmont is in the business of making money. I think that this project, however they've defined it or described it, will make them money. I think that's a guarantee. I think that they will also do whatever they believe is in their best interest. That is also a guarantee. Mr. Donovan said they appear to be listening, and that is exactly right. They're great salespeople, and they appear to be listening. They are not. They are interested in their profit, and they are interested in what is in their best interest, part of which is protecting, by their definitions, the First and Main. There should be nothing to be voted on by council. The fact that it's only a first reading makes no sense to me. It should never have reached the level of being read whatsoever. And I believe that I am the only candidate who has a definitive, clear plan for gathering information so that we can actually move forward together as a community on this project. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we move into the final question. And to begin this segment, Patricia Getz. The question, Do you think Hudson should provide policy and procedures that mitigate environmental impact of any and all development?
I think in this day and age with climate change and all the problems that we're having, that we should have some kind of procedures in order to do that. As I mentioned before, we need to look at, should there be things in place that say we have to use green technology in terms of the materials that we're going to use, how much pollution there's going to be, how much traffic, how much noise. All of that, I think, is really important environmentally that we look at. So we do need to develop more procedures in that over these next 4 years.
Thank you. Next is Greg Janik. I'm sorry. Do you think Hudson should provide policy and procedures that mitigate environmental impact of any and all development?
Yes, I do. I think it's vitally important as we look at every bit of development in this town. Our land code that we're about to take another look at, originally when we worked on that some 20 years ago, we had levels of disturbance that were all set in place for our development on the industrial side in regards to A, B, C, and D, which were the setback requirements from anything from stream corridors to trees and how we actually protected trees on our development site. We don't do any of that anymore. We currently have a citizenry board as appointed by council called the Environmental Awareness Committee. Originally, that was our recycling committee. Basically, what they do now is they put recycling banners up on our phone poles. These folks have a wonderful opportunity to be appointed by council to be the liaison to development as it pertains to our environment and how we develop it for the first time. Our impact to our Hudson is vitally important with every shovel that hits the ground, including phase 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Banwick, do you think Hudson should provide policy and procedures that mitigate environmental impact of any and all development?
Well, I think we have policy and procedure in the land development code. And as Greg alluded, it may not be strong enough. So maybe that's the core of the question, is not whether they should exist, but how strong they are and what guidance they provide. I think if Hudson is going to look at changing it, and certainly it makes absolute sense to evolve and use the best practices available, I think maybe the better word is guidance or guidelines that can be attached to these developments so that citizens can lean in and the residents can decide or influence how much is enough, how much is too much. So 2 pieces is to engage potentially through the Environmental Action Committee or through a forum with the citizens to see what they want can form or shape our policy. But in the interim, leveraging benchmark best practices, such as was referred to earlier in LEED practices, as guidelines to encourage and educate our developers and residents in when they build. So yeah, I think education and information is always an opportunity, but the core of the question is how much and how much is too much.
Thank you. Karen Heater, do you think Hudson should provide policy and procedures that mitigate environmental impact of any and all development?
So this question, I don't want to say it confuses me, but it does a little bit, only in the fact that we already have in place. I mean, there's federal, there's state standards when it comes to developments and policies to protect stormwater and air pollution and whatnot. So I think the suggestion I'm guessing is to add to that and to make it more restrictive, potentially in ways. So with that, you have to balance, I'm not in favor of over regulating things so that we, make things more complicated. Our zoning code is already complicated and needs a complete rework. And so as Chris alluded to, the other item is our comprehensive plan, and it is overdue to reinitiate reviewing that, which then translates into the zoning codes. And that may be a good opportunity, I think, to evaluate, where are there opportunities, at least to provide guidances, and suggestions for how to improve that.
Thank you. Nicole Kowalski, do you think Hudson should provide policy and procedures that mitigate environmental impact of any and all development?
Thank you. Yes, I in fact do. And I think that in regards to development, there are some opportunities that we should be looking at. As electric cars become more common, I would like to see us implementing more car charging stations in our common areas or downtown areas, as well as equipping garages with the appropriate electrical panels in order to have a car charging port in your garage. I think we need to make solar accessible. I know Mr. Banwag alluded to that earlier. That's something that myself and some other community members have been championing for years, going back to my service on the EAC before being elected to council. And in addition to that, I do think that stormwater management is really important because we do need to protect our watersheds. We have 3 watersheds that run through Hudson, and those have so many different species and wildlife that we need to protect.
Thank you. Todd Zidak, do you think Hudson should provide policy and procedures that mitigate environmental impact of any and all development?
We absolutely should. The federal government and the state government do have standards. Those standards may or may not be applicable to our town. They set a floor. We should set a higher bar if, in fact, we believe that it's appropriate. And I think we only have to look back 20 some years to the horrific, terrible flood that killed people at the Versailles Apartments and flooded Owen Brown Street. And during that time, the phase 2 property was covered in asphalt. And if you look at the plans for what Fairmont has proposed for water management, they have 3 small ponds that they apparently think will be adequate. Once again, because there is no guidance and there is no control and there is no real concern for the community, this is what you get. So we definitely have to have strong and strict laws regarding our environmental concerns.
All right, thank you very much. Mike Donovan, you can bring us to a conclusion of the questions. Do you think Hudson should provide policy and procedures that mitigate environmental impact of any and all development?
Yes, I do think that Hudson should provide policies that mitigate. And I would start with, I thought Mr. Banwag mentioned looking at best practices. I think that would be where we start. Is Hudson up to date? Are we equal to our neighboring communities or similarly sized communities? So are we doing what we can? And I think that's would be a good place to start. And phase 2, as Mr. Zidak suggested, that also may be where we begin when we look at those.
All right, thank you very much. 1 minute each for closing statements, and we'll begin with Sarah Norman.
Excuse me, I didn't get to answer the last question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please do so now. I
Yes,
must have
thank you. I appreciate
got out of
that.
order here. I appreciate you telling me.
Well, let me just suggest this, that if we really want to conserve energy, then we are going to build less and minimize the demand on energy. The people who will be moving into new houses here are people who already live somewhere else. So it is really incumbent upon us, if we want to preserve the environment, to build less. Now, we also build better, and that's the other part of the equation. So I would say that if you did answer yes to this question, and I cannot say no to it because I'm not exactly sure what is intended here, we really do have to examine our over 400-page zoning code, what we call the land development code, and admit that it is not doing the job we wanted to do. We need to have a moratorium on construction in this town long enough to write a modern zoning code that includes all of the environmental aspects that we desire to have. That's how I would address this issue for Hudson. It's about having a bigger vision, which I alluded to earlier. That's the kind of council person I would be for Hudson.
All right, thank you. And I apologize for my overlooking your number here. All right, so closing. And since you were called on before, you may begin. Sarah?
Okay, you didn't turn my mic off. So I want to thank you all for hosting this forum. It's been great to be a part of this discussion, and I appreciate the questions. I just want to remind everyone who's watching that I stand for 4 key values, which are transparent government, infrastructure equity, responsible government spending, and thoughtful development. I know that some people are concerned about whether or not we are behaving in a nonpartisan or partisan way, but let's just admit the fact that all of the candidates, with the exception of Mr. Zidak and Mr. Janik, are aligned in some way, shape, or form. All of the signs appear on the Spiritual Life Society property or at a place down by the Acme. We're all together because we're all of a like mind. And that's just the reality of a political environment. Let's also admit that we are dropping material with the like-minded people because that's the way that we function. That's the reality. I'm not going to put sugarcoating over anything for you. And if I offend you by not sugarcoating it, I'm sorry, but at least you can count on me to be honest. I am Sarah Norman, and I deserve your vote for Hudson City Council at large.
Thank you. Second is Greg Janik. I'll keep putting the Z in there. I apologize.
That's quite all right. Todd and I were classmates.
All right, there you go.
So look, I'm a citizen. I have the good fortune to serve thanks to council on the boards I've shared with you tonight. It's my importance to bring to this office you, my fellow citizens. I'm not a politician here. My hope is that with my ears that I want to listen to and bringing your voices, we can tackle some of these things that we're talking about right now. From phase 2 to our infrastructure needs, to our renewable energies, to our current energy uses, to all the things that make us who we are as Hudson. So my hope is that with your vote, we can do these things together. You know, we all can't, whoever you vote in can't do it without your voices, because you're the one who pays the bill. And that's very important to me, that we finally hold ourselves accountable for your money. So I look forward to your support. I look forward to speaking with you if I haven't. And again, thanks to the league and to all of my fellow candidates tonight.
And thank you. Todd Zidak, next.
Thank you to the league and to echo Greg's comments. Thank you to my fellow candidates for stepping up to the plate and making your voices known and heard. I'm sure that the citizenry respects that and appreciates our collective energy. I look forward to earning your vote. I'm a passionate person about Hudson. I have traveled the world. I have lived in a number of different cities, and Hudson was always my home. And I intend to do everything within my power to allow Hudson to thrive, to grow if that's what's appropriate, to remain as it is if that's appropriate. And once again, I have very clear plans for how to achieve these objectives. And I look forward to serving you on council, and I appreciate your participation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mike Donovan?
Yes, thank you. I also would like to thank the league for hosting this event. And I'd like to thank the candidates. Wow, this is pretty impressive that we have 8 people who are coming out to run for this office, these 3 open positions. So I'd like to thank all of you candidates for taking that leap. But again, I'm asking the citizens of Hudson to vote for me because I've got the knowledge, the skills, and experience. I've got 30 years in business and in public sector as well. And I'm ready to hit the ground running. And so I'm asking for your votes. So thank you.
Thank you. Patricia Getz?
Yes, and again, I echo what everyone is saying about thanking the league for this. I am the oldest candidate of the group, so I have the most years of experience, and much of my experience really has been how to help people solve problems together. And that's something that we're struggling with in Hudson, and I feel I could bring that to the council. I don't need this job. So why am I doing it? I'm doing it because I want to keep Hudson strong. I want to keep it strong for my grandkids and for others of that generation. So we have to look at all the things, the environmental impact, the financial impact, what we can do to continue to have a charming city, but it to be a safe and a welcoming city to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Heater.
And thank you for hosting this. Just in closing, I want to remind everybody I'm Hudson raised, community-driven, fiscally responsible, and I have the professional experience necessary to be on council. That was one of the questions raised up tonight, concerns about experience. I have a deep breadth of experience, particularly with city operations. When I ask residents why they moved to Hudson, their answers are typically for the small town character, for the historic downtown area, or for the school system. Our residents do not want to overdevelop the few properties that we have left, nor do they want to degrade those characteristics that brought them to Hudson in the first place. So as elected city council members, we need to make sure we're listening to our residents and maintaining those values that keep them in town. As an elected body, we have a responsibility to work collaboratively and make decisions in a fiscally responsible manner that are in the best interest of our residents. And as your city council representative, I will promote collaboration with city council members, city staff, and transparency with our residents in a responsibly financial management. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole Kowalski.
Thank you, and thank you to the league. Tonight, you've heard a lot of different opinions from the candidates on the way our council and our city functions. Some have positive outlooks, others do not. If after watching this forum, you believe that Hudson is a wonderful, well-run city with leaders and staff who work hard for you, then make a plan to vote. It can be easy to forget the impact local officials have on your day-to-day life. When you are happy with the way something is, it can be easy to forget that your voice and your vote matter in order to keep it that way. The proven strong leadership that has made our city the envy of other municipalities could be in jeopardy if Hudson residents do not go to the polls this November. Because this is an off-year election, every single vote will matter in this city council race. My work on council is not yet done. I am passionate about the impact I know I can have in this role, and I hope to earn the honor of representing you on council once again. I'm humbly asking that you vote for experience, that you vote for leadership, and that you vote to re-elect Nicole Kowalski on November 2nd or before, should you wish to cast your vote early. Please visit kowalskiforhudson.com to learn more.
Thank you very much. And last, in this particular race, Chris Banwig. You are muted, Mr. Banwig.
There it is. Thank you.
There you go.
And again, I'll echo those thank yous. When asked to serve in this capacity, I had to reflect, and I've realized that we find ourselves at times in challenging times because so many people believe that someone else will take care of the local issues, myself included. A quote from a fallen Iraq veteran came to my mind when I was asked to serve in this way. Lieutenant Travis Mannion, when he was asked why he was in Iraq, said, "If not me, then who?" It was a simple and yet poignant statement. Well, I'm here to step up. Hudson is a strong community with a bright future. I'm offering to help keep it on course. We need to focus on infrastructure, professional skills over political narratives and divisiveness. There are challenges and opportunities ahead that we haven't even seen yet. I will approach them representing the residents' interests in a fiscally conservative way, focused on transparency in government. In this election process, I understand I won't be supported by all residents, but you can know that if elected, I will represent all residents like a leader should. I offer a civil approach, professional skills, and mature leadership to the residents of Hudson. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank all the candidates for stepping up to serve their community. Hudson should be proud to have such a large group willing to do that. Thank you and good night to you. And we're going to clear the stage and bring on our next group, which is the Hudson Board of Education candidates. One more. Where are we missing here?
All the candidates appear to be moved over. Let's look really quickly.
David Zuro is not there. Oh, there he is, but his camera's not on. All right, I'm seeing something come up. David, could you turn on your camera? Ah, there you are. Okay, we have a full house. Let's go. 5 of a kind, all running for Board of Education. And thank you. As a career educator, I applaud you for stepping up and thank you for being here and serving. We're going to begin with opening statements. You will have 2 minutes each, and we will go in alphabetical order to do that, but that's the end of the alphabet for me. After that, it is a random selection, and I will call on you. You should never have to be in the same position more than once to answer these questions. So if you're first once, you probably won't be first again. So we'll make sure we call you and give you the question. I will read each question again after I call your name so that you will have an opportunity to hear it again. So we'll begin with Diane DeMonk for her opening statement. 2 minutes.
Sorry, I was unmuted. Hello, and thank you for inviting me to this forum. My name is Diane DeMonk, and I would like your vote to win a seat on Hudson City School Board. I'm sure many of you are wondering, under the current climate, why I would want to run for school board. Well, it's been the last 2 years I have seen things going on in our schools, and I feel the need to speak up and stand up for students and families. I would like to be a voice of common sense. I'm a mother of 3 incredibly distinct children, each with different educational needs. I have a special needs child, and I've learned to navigate the IEP system from kindergarten to high school, and have worked closely with teachers and support staff for continued educational, emotional, and social success of my child. I graduated from the University of Michigan with a degree in teaching, so please don't hold that blue and maize against me. I have 9 years of teaching experience, as well as 4 years coaching experience with teens and children in both suburban and urban areas. I served on the board of the Northeast Louisiana Red Cross after Hurricane Katrina and worked actively with schools when I lived in South Africa. I am the founder of the Hudson North Pole Mailbox, and I have spearheaded several fundraisers for families and causes in our community. I have active volunteer in city schools, in Hudson City Schools for 8 years, from Evamere Elementary to the sidelines of Hudson High School. My goal as a school board member would be to prioritize students, empower families, support teachers, and operate in a fiscally responsible and transparent manner. Our school board needs to be transparent when it comes to DEI and other lesson plans, school curriculum, teaching materials. Parents need to know what's going on in their schools, and they deserve a voice. We have amazing teachers in Hudson, and we have great schools. I am dedicated to continuing that excellence. We need to teach our students to be individual, critical thinkers, and I would be the fresh eyes to listen and respond to students and parents. I look forward to your vote in November. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's try to remember that there are time limits on everything, so please try to adhere to those time limits. Next is Steve DeMauro.
Good evening. My name is Steve DeMauro, and I've served on the Hudson School Board for the past 14 years. By day, I'm a client account leader with Accenture, a global consulting and professional services firm. During my time on the board, I've served the Hudson community with integrity, trust, and civility, traits we need now more than ever. My service on the board has never been about an agenda or politics, but rather acting in the best interest of the 4,600 students that we serve. When I first ran for office, my daughter was only 1 year old. And by the time the next term is scheduled to end, she will be studying in college somewhere. So frankly, this has never been about me, but serving Hudson to the best of my ability with a sense of grace and humility that the role requires. I believe, as evidenced by the district's accomplishments during my time in office, that I have made a very positive difference. Examples of this include driving a high-performance culture that attracts and retains the best and brightest talent for our students across our administrative team, our teachers, and our support staff, extending Hudson's tradition of academic excellence. Although our schools rate among the best in Ohio and nationally, we are never standing still. And we continue to drive new initiatives focused on our North Star, Portrait of an Explorer, teaching critical thinking, lifelong learning, empathy, collaboration, and other essential skills. Ensuring each child has an opportunity to learn in a safe, nurturing, and a diverse environment, supported by our mental health initiatives, our wellness efforts, our DEI initiative, and the safety enhancements to our buildings and our buses. Lastly, providing students and families new and renovated facilities. Just look around, the new middle school, renovations across K through 12, and the many new athletic facilities. If re-elected, I will continue to bring these same skills and leadership traits to serve the best interest of our children and the community at large.
Thank you very much. Mark Justice.
Thank you for the opportunity to come before you this evening. My name is Mark Justice, and I'm running for the Hudson School Board. My wife, Jeanette, and I are the proud parents of 3 young daughters. Like most of you, we encourage them to be lifelong learners and to aspire to better themselves and the people around them. They are my motivation to do what I can to assure the school system can maintain its standards of excellence. As an engineer, a business owner, and a technical trainer, I bring with me a unique set of experiences to the board. Collaboration, problem solving, and cost analysis are a few of the skills that I use daily that I would put to work for our schools. But one of my best skills is observing and identifying areas of improvement. For months now, I've witnessed dozens of Hudson residents go before our school board with real concerns about their children's health, quarantine policies, politics in the schools, and a curriculum transparency. I've watched this pattern repeat meeting after meeting, with the parents asking for clarification, transparency, and improvement, but very little concrete action ever comes of it. One thing that's readily apparent, regardless of the specific opinion, is that we have a board that readily votes in lockstep. One member stands out, and I applaud her for that, in that she has shown independent thought and the nerve to disagree when the other members all share the same opinion. But one voice is not enough, and it's clear that we need a wider variety of voices on this.
All right, thank you very much. Again, I'm going to ask you to adhere to the timelines.
Dr. Winter.
Everyone has the same timeline.
Dr. Winter, his time, it wasn't the 2 minutes, it started only with 1 minute. His timer started at 1 minute.
Thank you. I kind of thought that went awfully fast.
Now, can you pick up where you left off?
We'll give it a shot here. But one voice is not enough, and it's clear that we need a wider variety of voices on this board if we are going to properly and fairly guide our path forward. We need better transparency, better respect for parents, and to remove politics from the schools. But this will not happen without new voices on the board. Thank you for the opportunity to earn your vote and to represent you on our school board and to help bring unity back to the city of Hudson. Thank you.
And my deepest apologies for that.
No,
and I'm going to go slap the timekeeper. And Lisa, thank you for waking me up. I was watching the questions instead of the timer. I apologize for that. Elisa, you now may start. I'll try to be better with our timekeeper.
That's all right. Thank you, League of Women Voters, for hosting this event. I'm Elisa Wright. I was first elected to school board in 2017, and I'm seeking re-election for a second term. I was born and raised in Akron, graduated from the University of Akron and the Ohio State University College of Law. My husband, Brad, and I have lived in Hudson for 24 years. Brad is a 1983 Hudson graduate, and our 2 daughters are graduates, and we have a son who's currently a sophomore there. Over the past 4 years, I've contributed strong leadership to the board as a critical and independent thinker. I identify and understand the issues facing our district and seek out and value parent and community input. Importantly, I approach resolutions without personal or political agenda. I do the necessary research, ask important questions, and communicate openly in order to make well-informed and transparent decisions with proven student-centered results. I'm a respected collaborator, making valuable connections between parents, administrators, community leaders, and school supporters to innovatively solve problems, leverage our resources, and create meaningful opportunities and experiences for our students. With awareness and empathy, I continually evaluate our policies and practices to ensure that all students have the supports they need in order to maximize their learning, participation, and growth in our schools while feeling safe, included, and valued. When I was approached by community and school leaders 4 years ago to run for the Board of Education, it seemed like a logical next step to my over 20 years of service and support in our schools and in our community. I was flattered, and the decision was an easy one. The decision now is just as easy, although much more important. Our schools are the bedrock of our community. I want to continue to serve as a nonpartisan representative with integrity, civility, and transparency, always putting our students at the center. And I hope that parents and community members who value our tradition of excellence will re-elect me to Hudson School Board. Thank you.
Thank you. In the last opening statement, David Zorro.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for this opportunity. I'm David Zuro, and I am running for re-election because I care about the well-being of our children, our school district, and our community. I believe my professional experience, leadership, and vision qualify me for re-election. During the past 12 years, I have become experienced in virtually every aspect of board service. My legal education and AT&T management career have served me well. Our record speaks for itself. Hudson schools have continuously ranked amongst the best in the state and nation. We have gone over 10 years without an operating levy and expect to go a couple more. We have increased emphasis on development of the whole child with our Portrait of an Explorer initiative. Our master facilities plan included construction of the new Hudson Middle School, as well as significant improvements to our other school buildings. And we built a new stadium primarily with private donations. Looking ahead, it is essential that we continue to promote student and staff well-being during COVID in a way that protects their health and keeps them in school. We need to sustain our efforts to create an environment where all students feel welcome and valued in the Hudson Schools community. We must ensure that we are providing the supports necessary to enable all students to maximize their potential. We should continue to provide opportunities that enable our special needs students to participate in activities otherwise unavailable to them. After the transfer of administrative and HCER staff to the Evamere building, we need to determine alternative uses for our vacated administrative quarters. We also need to determine the best financially viable adaptive reuse of the 1927 school building. Finally, I believe we should pursue an orchestra room as well as further improvements to our girls softball complex at Hudson High School. I appreciate your consideration and support.
The next phase is questioning, and I will remind you that the question answer period is 1 minute for each question per candidate. And this will be a random selection, so you will not ever be asked to be number one to answer the question each time, nor number two. You will randomly be chosen. So, and in the luck of the draw, Mr. Zero, you were number one to answer the question. First question. I will read the question for each candidate again after I call their name. So we'll begin with Mr. Zorro, and the first question is, what do you think is the best way to integrate concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion into Hudson's academic program?
I think we ought to continue to move forward in the path that we have chosen. We don't have a curriculum per se for DEI. Our DEI initiative is more directed toward providing supports and ways in which we can reinforce with our students an appreciation for all, their differences as well as their similarities, and to understand and respect those. And again, to work to make their school mates feel welcome and valued. Inclusion, we need to continue to provide ways to give opportunities to all of our students, including our special needs students, and with respect to equity, we need to be fair to all and enable all students to achieve their respective potentials.
Thank you. Next is Mark Justice. The question is, what do you think is the best way to integrate concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion into Hudson's academic program?
Thank you. Good question. So the best way to integrate it would be to approach it from the standpoint of, what is our goal? I think we've got a common goal, everybody here, of making sure that everybody feels welcome. Every student feels welcome. Nobody feels excluded from participating in class or any aspect of school. What we have to make sure that we keep in mind as we move forward on this is what is it that we're trying to achieve, and how do we want to achieve that? And I think at the core of that, we want to make sure that we're appreciating the diversity of thought that's behind the generation of such programs. We have to be extra careful of, and this is where I've got some issues with the current DEI program, is that it's being developed behind closed doors. And even though parents have been asking to see what's going on within these meetings, they've been refused access time and time again for months. And anything that's being developed behind closed doors is going to come along with suspicion. So we need to be transparent. That's the final key. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane DeMonk. The question, what do you think is the best way to integrate concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion into Hudson's academic program?
Well, first, actually, I had written a note before Mark had said it, and I think we need to approach it with transparency. Parents are not being told what is being taught in the classroom. And again, this is not a curriculum, and I realize that, but these are set lesson plans that are being taught to our children, and parents are not knowing in full what's being done. And we're also using the Northeast Ohio Diversity Center for what they have, what's literally called programming. And because of their own privacy for businesses, they will not be transparent in their approach in teaching our children. So the first thing I would approach it with is, are these lesson plans transparent? And let's make them transparent if they're not. Obviously, every child should feel needed. I have a child with special needs, and I have to tell you, I saw the most heartwarming thing as he approached the rugby field for the very first time. And that was all of the guys, come on, come play, we got this. And they included them. And I see people being included regardless of their race and their gender all the time.
All right, thank you. Next is Steve DeMauro. The question, what do you think is the best way to integrate concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion into Hudson's academic program?
Let me start by saying I believe we need a balanced approach. And this is one area that, as Mark said, I think we all can agree on in terms of providing an environment that welcomes and accepts all students, makes them feel respected, loved, and valued. I disagree with the idea that there hasn't been transparency. What we have communicated on a regular basis is our updates from our working groups. And our working groups include policies and procedures that are focused on making our staff reflect our student population. From a curriculum perspective, it's about introducing and representing different authors and points of view. We haven't changed curriculum though. We're also looking at professional development to ensure that we can have courageous conversations with students when certain issues come up. From a cultural programming perspective, it's a cookbook. And then we're also looking at behavioral health. So to some extent, this is becoming a cultural war issue, and I respectfully disagree with some of how this is becoming politicized.
Thank you. And Elisa Wright, what do you think is the best way to integrate concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion into Hudson's academic program?
I think it's important to note that our mission is to provide an educational program that maximizes the intellectual, physical, social, and emotional development of each child in a safe, nurturing, and diverse environment. That mission was developed with parent and community input and support and is not new. The attacks on that mission are new, but the mission itself is not. We have a strong tradition of providing individualized support to our students. So I strongly believe that we should continue to meet our students where they are with the resources needed to help them thrive. I also support policies and practices promoting a culture in our schools where the differences and unique experiences of every student can be safely explored and celebrated. Even before COVID, our students told us that they lack a sense of belonging. And we know that students learn better when they feel safe, valued, included. That's the work that we're doing for under DEI, and that's the work that needs to be done. So with input from students, parents, and community members, we are defining our DEI efforts and the needs of the district.
Thank you. Second question, and we will begin with Steve DeMauro. Question number 2. What is your position regarding the proposal to have cameras in all classrooms K-12?
So as far as the proposal to have classroom, that's been suggested on 2 fronts. First, you can look at it from a perspective of how do we make sure that we educate students when they may be quarantined or not able to be in the classroom. And that, I think, is a valid concern raised by parents, and our administration has been looking at that in terms of trying to do everything we can not to have the pandemic impact the educational experience of our students. When people are looking at that through the lens of wanting complete transparency of what goes into the classroom, well, number 1, you have privacy concerns. Number 2, you need to consider the student experience. If you have a classroom or a camera in the classroom, students may not behave the same way. Third, when we talk about providing an environment that brings the best and brightest, people don't necessarily want to teach under a police state, and that's what's being suggested.
All right, thank you. Elisa Wright, what is your position regarding the proposal to have cameras in all classrooms K-12?
I think it's notable that that proposal is new and that it is essentially advocating for the monitoring of the behaviors of our students and our teachers. And I strongly disagree with that. I believe that such recordings would have a stifling impact on the educational experience. Teachers would teach less freely. Students would be less likely to participate if they knew they were being recorded for people outside of the classroom to view for days after, which is the proposal. I worry that even with controlled access, that those recordings could be re-recorded and utilized publicly to harass and ridicule our students and teachers. If we have been making concessions and adaptions in order to provide our kids that are either sick or in quarantine, and I think we're doing a good job of that, but this is not the answer.
Thank you. Mark Justice, what is your position regarding the proposal to have cameras in all classrooms K-12?
So I think this is something that we definitely do need to talk about. It offers a lot of benefits. If you've got children that miss a day of school, they've got the ability to now go back and rewatch a lesson. If parents are confused about what a student is trying to explain to them that they learned in math class or what have you, the parent can kind of look through and try and learn along with the child in reviewing a lesson. So it's got a lot of important aspects from that, the standpoint of helping our children, if they miss a day, helping them not to fall farther behind. But it can also help them from the standpoint of what happens when some kid is being bullied within class. And this happened to my daughter personally. A child was bullying her for weeks and nobody knew about it until a teacher's assistant stepped out of the room and watched through the window to find out that it was actually happening. with some sort of video, at least administration could have come forward and said, look, this is happening, and we could have taken care of it way early on before it became a long-term issue. I'm not saying that it needs to be public access all the time, but to have that available as an option, I think is an important tool in our belt.
Thank you. Diane DeMonk, what is your position regarding the proposal to have cameras in all classrooms K-12? Ms. DeMonk, you're
I'm sorry, I was
yes,
muted.
very good. Thank you.
And you know what, just so you know, I don't have a timer. There's no timer.
It's
saying,
can you see it on the screen?
No, I haven't seen it since we started. So that's why I had no clue. Just so you know, it's not been on the screen. So I wasn't
Do
trying
the
to
rest of you see it on the screen?
I just wanted to let you know I can use my phone to do the minute or the 2 minutes, but I haven't known the entire time.
You can see it on the grid view, but not when I'm speaking. Well,
It's not here.
view.
So I just wanted you to know that it wasn't something I was trying to be rude or continue on.
Okay.
But with that question, it's a very interesting question. I do believe Steve is right that there could be some possible issues. So one or a couple answers I would like to see happen, or some concepts happen, is maybe have one classroom to test this model out to see what really does happen. I do agree also with Mark, it makes it easier for children to obtain the homework, especially if they're on quarantine and or they are sick at home. And if we're not going to have cameras in the classroom, then let's have someone available to make lesson plans on a daily basis via Zoom, or somehow check in with that teacher, maybe during a live lesson, or at least during that lesson of the classroom, so that the child can keep up what's going on.
Thank you. David Zorro, what is your position regarding the proposal to have cameras in the classrooms K-12?
I am opposed to cameras in the classrooms for all of the reasons that have been articulated both by Mr. DeMoro and Mrs. Wright. I will just simply say that we know that students are stifled in terms of their participation and act differently in a classroom when they know that there is a camera in there. I believe that it is inappropriate to record all teachers all day long in their lessons, and I think it would greatly harm our ability to attract and retain the best of the best, and we pride ourselves on having the best of the best in our teaching staff. So I just don't see there being a benefit to it, and I am opposed to it.
All right, thank you. I haven't called on anybody. Oh, there we go. We're having a little trouble with our timer, apparently. All right, let's begin with question number 3, and we'll begin with Diane DeMonk again. And question 3 is, what do you see as the most important issues facing a newly elected school board?
Well, a school board member or a school board? Because
the whole board.
If we were to have a whole new board, we would be giving, are you speaking relatively to Hudson?
Yes. So next year, when you have a new board, what do you think would be the issues facing you?
I actually don't look at it as issues. I look at it as opportunities. We have a lot of people who have been on the board for a very long time. And I think having a new board would give fresh eyes to look at everything and give different perspectives, where perspectives have been the same for 10, 12 years. I think the only challenges would be to work together and find that way to mesh everything together. But I look at it as something very positive that would only bring more excellence to our school district.
All right, thank you. Next is Elisa Wright. What do you see as the most important issues facing a newly elected school board?
I think that the school board's going to need to continue to deal with the challenge of providing a safe and inclusive learning environment for our students. Our immediate goal is to maximize safe in-person learning for our kids 5 days a week. So that is likely to continue to be an issue, and evaluating the public health recommendations as well as the public health circumstances and implementing necessary COVID mitigation strategies in order to do that. I think we're going to also need to keep assessing learning loss from last year. And I've advocated recently for expanded recovery intervention in K through 12 to provide timely academic and mental health supports. I think that's going to continue to be an issue. And then, as I said before, even before the pandemic, we learned that many of our students do not feel valued or included. And so I think we're going to continue to address the promotion of a culture of belonging where every student can learn and grow.
Thank you. Steve DeMauro, what do you see as the most important issues facing a newly elected school board?
Well, I would say first and foremost, it's providing our students with in-person classroom learning and extracurriculars due to the pandemic. But beyond that, I think we also need to look ahead in terms of driving continuous improvements aligned to our Portrait of Explorer. Prior to the pandemic, we went through a 3-year strategic visioning session where we gathered collaboration, or we collaborated with the community, went through a discovery phase and so on. And there were a number of takeaways from that. Assessing better ways to balance our learning and student wellness, enhancing the focus on essential life skills and the trades. And then, as pointed out by some of my current board peers, driving diversity and inclusion and making sure that all of our students feel a sense of belonging within the schools.
All right, thank you. Mark Justice, what do you see as the most important issues facing a newly elected school board?
So I think the biggest issue that we've got with our board is to overcome the transparency issues that we have right now. Without clear transparency in what's going on in the development of curriculum or curriculum influencing programs, it's hard to take the output from this board and say, yes, it was all fairly generated. More importantly, or I guess in line with that, to get down to a specific issue, let's look at bullying, because I think bullying is something that that is extremely important, and it's a challenge that all school systems have. We in Hudson have it exceedingly so. It's troubling to me to look at the reports that we have on bullying and accept that we have single-digit bullying cases. Something just doesn't seem to add up that way, not from what I've heard back from parents. There seems to be a lot more instances that are not being reported. We need to make sure that the children feel safe in reporting bullying instances and that we're following up on them quickly and properly. Thank you.
All right, thank you. David Zorro, what do you see as the most important issues facing a newly elected school board?
Well, first and foremost, we have the continuation of the COVID challenge, and we need to continue our focus on protecting the health and well-being, not only of our students, but of our staff as well. And we need to do that in the interest of maintaining in-person instruction for our kids. Secondly, I believe that our diversity, equity, inclusion initiative needs to continue to progress. We need to make an environment where all students feel welcome and valued, and we need to continue to provide special supports as needed in a fair manner to make sure all students can achieve their potential. And we need to continue to provide inclusive opportunities to give all students an opportunity to participate in activities that might otherwise not be available to them.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll move to the next question. And to begin that questioning, Elisa Wright will be first. And the question is, what criteria and processes should be used to choose or reconsider curricular materials, library materials, Are these different than the current policies?
Thank you. I think it's interesting that the recent issues relating to curriculum and materials have been cast upon this board recently. Those processes lie first with our trusted administration and teachers to develop. And there is, a review in place for those to be vetted. So again, I think it's notable that this is being cast on the board when the review happens at a different level than a board level. To the extent that there's a change in policy, that would come before the board. And currently those policies are under review, and the administration is taking a look at that and is going to recommend whether or not changes need to be made. And then that will be subject to public discussion at a board meeting and review by the board.
Thank you. Next is Steve Demaro. And the question once again is, what criteria and processes should be used to choose or reconsider curricular materials, library materials? Are these different than the current policies?
Let me start by just echoing what Lisa Wright just said in terms of the processes that we have in place. I think it's important, though, to remind ourselves that our goal as a district is to maximize the intellectual, physical, social, and emotional growth of each child. So as part of that, censoring literary works that might have controversial content isn't in line with the Hudson's Portrait of an Explorer, which seeks to understand and then learn from others and welcome and accept all different types of people. Many of the different literary works do just that. We look at Catcher in the Rye, that has been controversial for many years in the 60s and 70s, and it had different controversial themes, and some people still object to it. We need to be able to expose the appropriate content to our students in the appropriate way. Do I feel that certain content should not be in front of our students? Yes, and we need to have a process to review that and to ensure that that doesn't happen.
Thank you. Mark Justice, what criteria and processes should be used to choose or reconsider curricular materials, library materials? Are these different than the current policies?
So I agree with Lisa that the board itself isn't to review every book that goes out there. That's a given, but they do set the stage. And when the 642 prompts information came about, not a single board member said a word about, oh, that's a problem, oh, we need to act on that, until well after 30 minutes after all of the public comments had been given. They sat in silence after the principal gave his report. That was the 642 prompts. That was lightweight compared to what came out last week in our city schools, in our Hudson High School library, which was 100% pornography. It was graphic illustrations of, I'm not going to go into details, you can look them up yourself, but the book names are Genderqueer or A Girl on the Shore. And if you look up any of those, you'll find that those absolutely fit the description of pornography. They never belonged in our schools. If we had leadership that was setting a good example, that was transparent, and that administrators could look to as an example, this sort of thing doesn't happen. And that's my point.
Thank you. David Zuro, what criteria and processes should be used to choose or reconsider curricular materials, library materials? Are these different than the current policies?
Well, first of all, I agree with the points that were made by Mrs. Wright and Mr. Demoro. I won't repeat them here. I will note that the administration took immediate action when the problem was called to their attention. It was raised over a weekend by a parental complaint, and by Monday morning, action was being taken to remove the books from the particular class, and an investigation, or I should say a review, was announced as far as on an internal basis to determine what the practices are, what the review entails and how those practices can be improved. I endorse the fact that our district acts so quickly. We need to improve there. It's pretty apparent, and they're taking the necessary steps to do that.
Thank you. And Diane DeMont. What criteria and processes should be used to choose or reconsider curricular materials and library materials? Are these different than the current policies?
Again, I do agree with Alyssa that, the board can't read every single book, but obviously in the last few weeks, in regards to the materials, one that has been in our school for 6 years, and the materials that were found in the library, a ball was dropped. A ball was dropped very hard. And we need to have something additional in place so these things don't happen again. Whether it's the 642 prompting book or A Girl on a Shore, which I actually could show you pictures or read to you, but it is so offensive that I cannot. And it is absolutely pornographic in content. Same with the book, I apologize, Genderqueer. We need to make sure this is not happening and our tax dollars are not going towards books like that. Of course, we want to continue to include children. This isn't about including children. It was pornography flat out. And not one person on our board apologized for any of the content.
Right,
and when
thank
Brian
you.
Blow,
Thank you.
thank you.
Last question, and we'll begin that questioning with Mark Justice. Question is, what in your opinion is the current financial health of the Hudson school system? And do you see the need for new taxes in the near future?
So good question. So currently we're on good standing. I think Mr. Buto is offering some good advice and keeping us on good guidance as far as that is concerned. However, let's look 2 years from now. We're on a track that sometime within the next 2 to 4 years, we're going to need additional funds unless we make some changes in the way that we're budgeting. So that may happen next year. It may happen 3 years from now, but it's somewhere in that range. So we can expect it's coming unless we're able to make some adjustments between here and there. But currently, I'd say we're stable, but we are approaching a point where we are going to need to ask for money, and we need to be ready to make sure that that's evaluated properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane DeMont, what in your opinion is the current financial health of the Hudson school system? And do you see the need for new taxes in the near future?
In reviewing the financial report, it does show in the next 5 years that we will have an additional $10 million and we will go from 65 million to needing 75 million. We need to cut our spending as much as possible to keep us from having to have another levy. I think we need to be fiscally responsible and definitely transparent. They were tax dollars tax dollars money before they ever became the schools. And we need to be good stewards of that money. Thank you.
Thank you. David Zorro, what in your opinion, is the current financial health of the Hudson school system? And do you see the need for new taxes in the near future?
Well, first, I would like to say that we have gone for over 10 years without an operating levy, which is pretty unusual for school districts, given the effects of House Bill 920 on continual reduction of effective millage as property values go up. We expect, based on current forecasts, to be able to go at least another couple of years without a levy. So to go for 12 years or more between operating levies is really a great accomplishment. We are at the bottom half of the levy cycle, which means that our spending will exceed year over year our revenues, and as it's expected to. And so we will be in a position to look for more. In the meantime, we continue our prudent financial management and try to make best possible use of the taxpayer dollars.
Thank you. Elisa Wright, what, in your opinion, is the current financial health of the Hudson school system? And do you see the need for new taxes in the near future?
I'll just reiterate that, since we haven't had a levy in over 10 years, I mean, it's realistic to think that we are going to need one at some point in time. In terms of the overall health, though, I think it's worth noting that we have a very skilled and dedicated treasurer's office that is constantly working to maximize the impact of our resources in our district. We also have a financial advisory committee that works with our treasurer's office. So we have tapped into, like other committees, like DEI, Student Safety Committee, 1927 Building Committee. We tap into the wealth of professional knowledge and experience in our community. So we have not just a great treasurer's office, but great advisors as well. We're constantly looking for efficiencies. During our MFP, we built in some energy efficiencies that will have cost savings. So I think we're healthy in the sense that we're just constantly trying to do as much as we can with the resources that we have.
Thank you. Steve DeMauro, what, in your opinion, is the current financial health of the Hudson school system? And do you see the need for new taxes in the near future?
I'll echo some of the comments that were made. I mean, we are going to be at a point where we're going to need to consider that in 3 to 5 years, but I think it's important to point out how far we've been able to stretch every tax dollar over the last 10 years. It's also important to point out that our treasurer's office recently was awarded the Auditor of State Award with distinction, which is only awarded to the top 3% of public school districts. So we have been managing our tax dollars very efficiently and effectively over the last 10 years, and we have a lot to be proud of. The other thing to consider is, as we look at what we've done over the years, we've done a tremendous amount of right sizing. We went through the financial crisis, did a ton of right sizing, and made sure that our student programming was sized accordingly to address the needs of the gifted, the special needs, and everyone in between. And we need to consider doing that moving forward. So this idea of cutting to avoid going back to taxpayers, I think, is an impractical proposition.
Thank you. That is the end of the questions. You will have 1 minute for closing, and we will begin with Elisa Wright.
Thank you. I just want to say that that bullying and curriculum have been issues. They're not new. I think it's notable that 4 years ago, 3 of us ran unopposed. 2 years ago, the other 2 board members ran unopposed. Since May, we have had speakers at our meetings that have been advancing various false narratives that our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts equal CRT, that board members are all of the same political ideology, that board members are making COVID mitigation strategy decisions based on politics, that this board has failed to exercise oversight of rogue teachers and administrators, that course material and literary works are criminal. None of these things are true. So I would ask that everybody cast a vote to let us hear your voice and choose integrity in this election.
Thank you. Diane DeMont?
Yes. First of all, DEI is not transparent. The board members are running on a Democratic slate ticket, as seen on Casey Weinstein's post. When I am elected as school board member, I will listen to all of the voices because all of them matter. I will respond openly to any concerns, be fiscally responsible, and stay focused on schools rather than outside political activities for personal gain. I believe that parents do make the best choice and decisions for their children, and that includes masking and vaccinations. I am in support of keeping political ideologies and social justice campaigns out of classrooms. because politics does not belong in our classroom. Thank you, and I look forward to your vote on November 2nd.
Thank you. David Zero.
I would like to first thank the League of Women Voters again for hosting this forum. And I would like to thank the respective candidates for providing their perspectives this evening. And I would like to thank all of the attendees who are watching and taking the time to become familiar with the candidates and the issues that are under consideration. And I urge you all to exercise your right to vote in this election. Moving forward, our school board needs to continue our focus on serving the best interests of our students in a nonpartisan way. It is particularly vital that we do that in the current environment. Our board, current members have no special agendas, and our hearts are in the right place. And that's so vitally important. We operate in an environment of mutual respect. And with that, we've been able to accomplish much. Thank you.
Mark Justice.
I'd like to thank you again for the opportunity to earn your vote tonight. I chose to run for the school board to make a difference and to be a voice for the parents, children, and teachers that deserve better representation. I will bring my skills as an engineer, a business owner, and a parent to the table for our schools. I will work to represent parents, improve transparency, and to pull politics out of our schools. My children will assure that I've got skin in the game for the next several years to come. On a final note, I'd like to thank Elisa for coming to my defense earlier on the timing issue. And I would like to second her statement that building a culture of belonging in our schools is extremely important. It's something that really is what is going to ultimately solve our bullying issue. We've got to work together. And I look forward to working together on this board, helping to unify Hudson and bringing a new set of viewpoints to this board so that we can truly represent all of our residents and parents. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve DeMauro.
Let me just start by saying it's been an honor and privilege to serve on the Hudson School Board. And I couldn't be more proud of the many accomplishments of our students in the district as a whole. I had more prepared statements, but I need to respond because the question wasn't asked regarding the nonpartisan nature of this race. Regrettably, this is the first time I've ever run for school board. And I've been on the ballot. This will be my 5th time. And it's the first time I've received questionnaires from the Republican and Democratic Party. I've chosen not to respond. And I've actually gone as far, similar to Mike Donovan, who spoke earlier, to tell people that while I appreciate support from people in the red and people in the blue, this is a nonpartisan race, and there's nothing more important for caring for the 4,600 students that we serve. Our challengers for this race responded to that questionnaire, which asked questions such as, will you pass a resolution condemning CRT? And there's a whole host of those. They also are being supported by a political party. And I think that is wrong.
Thank you. And thanks to all the candidates for stepping up to serve their community. And now I give you to Beverly Dorson. Beverly?
Okay.
You're still muted, Beverly.
Okay. As voter service chairman, I want to thank some people, the following people. Absolutely, the candidates who agreed to inform the public of their passion to serve as public servants. And in addition, practice this new format, Zoom webinar. Our wise and wonderful moderator, president of the League of Women Voters of Akron area, Roseanne Winter, an amazing technological Wiz, Charlotte Martin Bloodsaw, who helped us with this format. We are sorry if anyone could not observe the timer. We thought that all our panelists were watching the clock. It seemed that most speakers stopped almost on the last second. The committee of league members, especially our president, Melanie Johnson, who was my co-voter service chair, and also our screeners who really worked hard to condense quite a few questions and we couldn't ask them all. We applaud our audience who cared enough to seek more information than yard signs and casting the ballot. Watch the complete webinar at your leisure by tuning into our Hudson Cable TV next week and the following weeks before the November 2nd election. The League of Women Voters Candidates Forum will start next week, October 11th to 17 at 7 p.m. on Monday, 7 and 10 Tuesday, and check your listings in the hub. Please log into our League of Women Voter US vote411.org for background education and answers to our locally provided questions to help you decide how to vote. Also watch for print guide in the Akron Beacon Journal mid-October and in the local weeklies the paper owns, as in case of Hub, as well as paper's electronic editions. The complete guide will also be available through www.vote411.org. Remember, early voting has begun and absentee voting is available but must be requested. And ballot needs to be postmarked or at the Board of Election by November 1st. In-person election hours are 6:30 a.m. to 7:30, November 2nd. Please do vote. All democracy begins at the local level. Thank you for attending.